We tend to encounter Stoicism today in bite-sized fragments. It circulates as a collection of passive coping mechanisms, daily affirmations, and isolated quotes meant to offer comfort in stressful times. That reputation is largely a historical illusion. It stems from a text called the Enchiridion, or the Manual. But the Manual is a heavily redacted summary, a cheat sheet compiled years later that strips away the underlying logic of the original teachings. To find the actual philosophy, we have to read the unabridged discourses, recorded by his student Arian. In these records, Epictetus operates a rigorous dialectical clinic, engineering a highly systematic model of the human mind. His entire framework is built on a massive, apparent contradiction. Epictetus maps out a cosmos governed by strict, inescapable determinism, while simultaneously claiming to provide a blueprint for absolute human freedom. Understanding this resolution requires us to discard the concept of the Stoic sermon. We must rebuild his cognitive architecture from the ground up, component by component: freedom, judgment, volition, and integrity. This reconstruction reveals an airtight, hostile environment operating system for human agency. This system was developed in the early 2nd century, during the reign of Emperor Trajan. The Roman Empire was an environment where a single ruler held absolute authority over life, death, and property. Epictetus taught here in Nicopolis. It was a bustling metropolitan Greek port city, uniquely positioned as a major transit hub between Italy and Greece. The man running the school had lived the extremes of the Roman hierarchy. Epictetus was a formerly enslaved, chronically lame man who survived the tyrannical courts of Nero and Domitian before eventually securing his freedom. Now he was challenging the sons of the Roman elite. His students were wealthy, highly educated young men traveling across the empire to prepare for careers in public administration or philosophical teaching. The severe reality of Epictetus's life, combined with the elite status of his students, necessitated a philosophy of high-stakes, real-world application. This diagram represents the first layer of the Stoic system, universal nature. In Stoic physics, the universe is a singular, providential, and strictly causal chain of events. Every action is locked into a deterministic grid. Physical human assets sit entirely inside this structure. Your body, your bank account, your property, and your political status are subject to external forces. They belong to fate. To survive this, Epictetus introduces his defining innovation, prohairesis, or volition. This is the impenetrable core of human consciousness, your capacity to form judgments and choose your goals. This creates a severe dualism of control. Your body can be chained and your property can be seized, but volition is the only domain in the universe capable of self-determination. The rule of this system is absolute. If an object, an event, or a status falls outside of that specific node of volition, it is strictly categorized as not ours. True autonomy begins by relocating your identity into this isolated node of volition, moving it out of the vulnerable physical body. If volition is impenetrable, we have to explain how humans actually experience suffering. This flowchart illustrates the Stoic cognitive model. Notice that an external stimulus cannot touch the core directly. It must pass through a gateway called judgment. Emotions in this system are the strict mathematical outputs of your own cognitive judgments evaluating that incoming data. Take a physical illness or the loss of property. From the perspective of the deterministic web, this is simply a neutral input.
An objective fact of nature. The damage only occurs at the filter. When you form the specific judgment that illness is bad, you weaponize the input. That value judgment breaches the volition, destabilizes the core, and generates the emotion of misery. Human suffering is a self-inflicted cognitive error. You are harmed solely by your own faulty categorizations of reality. Defining this architecture on paper is one thing. Installing this highly unnatural cognitive software into a classroom of Erika Merman teenagers is another. Epictetus utilized a dual engine of discourse, protreptic, meaning exhortative, and alenctic, meaning refutative. He dismantled his students' assumptions piece by piece. He inherited this aggressive methodology directly from Socrates. It is designed to induce painful cognitive dissonance. Using the Socratic method, Epictetus trapped his students in logical corners. He interrogated their definitions until he exposed the lethal contradictions hidden inside their own belief systems. He would force a student to admit they desperately desired absolute happiness, while simultaneously proving that they placed all their value on external objects they could not control. The classroom in Nicopolis was a psychological crucible. The Stoic operating system was installed only after the students' existing ego and their flawed logic were publicly destroyed. Abstracting the self entirely into an isolated node of volition risks creating a detached antisocial mindset. This is where Epictetus activates the fourth and final pillar of the system, integrity. A perfected volition recognizes that its own nature is fundamentally rational and social. Integrity has a strict operational rule. To preserve the health of the self, the volition must flawlessly execute its relational roles. You must fulfill your specific duties as a loyal citizen, a supportive sibling, or a dedicated parent. Altruism and social duty are forms of structural self-preservation. You act justly because treating your neighbor poorly would corrupt your own mental architecture. The ultimate Epictetan Stoic is fiercely loyal and deeply engaged in their community. They execute their societal role precisely because failing to do so would destroy their internal system from the inside out. We can now test this completed architecture against the extreme stakes of the era. Imagine the ultimate threat. An autocratic Roman emperor promises to strip away your property and execute you. Let's track this threat through the flowchart. The emperor's decree approaches from the deterministic grid. The judgment filter processes it, stripping the bad value away. It categorizes the action as a neutral external event outside your control. The volition core remains completely undisturbed, generating an output of dignified action. Stoic freedom is the absolute psychological invulnerability achieved through this specific cognitive parsing. It remains untouched by political liberty or the whims of an emperor. Epictetus did not demand that his teenage students transform into perfect, unfeeling Stoic sages. He knew that was an impossible ideal. His actual goal is what scholars call an ethics of the interval. He provided a practical framework for fallible humans to constantly monitor their mental parsing of reality. He openly admitted it is impossible for a human being to be completely free from error. What is possible, he argued, is to be constantly on alert against it. Epictetus engineered a system that recognizes the fragility of the human mind, protecting its dignity through a relentless logic enduring for 2 millennia.